Hey guys, this is the Great Jedi and welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing good, and today I'm going to show you how to win lightsaber duels in Star Wars Battlefront 2 and become the ultimate Jedi Grandmaster or Sith Lord. I do have quite a bit of tips to show you, all of the way from parrying, striking, dodging, blocking, ability combos, and a bunch of other tips. So please be sure to stay to the end of the video to get all of the tips and tricks and become unstoppable, because the tips at the end are just as important as the tips at the beginning and throughout the video. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first tip I want to go over may seem pretty simple to some people, but it is still pretty important. And that is to know your character that you're playing, because each hero and villain plays differently. For example, Anakin and Kylo are both offensive heroes that have abilities that go through blocks. Now, knowing this, be aware of your opponent's character and find out what they shine at. In other words, know what they can do, find out their strengths and their weaknesses, and you can do that by playing and practicing with each hero and villain, because you will be at a huge advantage if you know what you're up against. For instance, let's say you're going against a Kenobi player. If you know how that Kenobi plays, then you'll know what will work against that character. For example, if you know that Kenobi has a really good health regen pool and is a defensive hero, but he also has a slow swing speed compared to some of the other heroes, you'll know when to strike. Although knowing when to strike may be pretty hard for some people, and that is one of the very first things that you should focus on in a lightsaber duel, and that is parrying. Parrying is in the game, and don't let anyone tell you different. Whether that system was intentionally put in the game or not, it still works. Parrying is where you can completely counter-strike your opponent if they hit you while blocking, and you take no damage in the process. So if you've ever been in a 1v1 situation and you just swing spammed your opponent and they parried your attacks and didn't lose a speck of health, that's parrying. But enough talking about it, let's get right into how to do it. So let's say there's someone right in front of you and you're in a 1v1 situation and they're swing spamming at you. What you need to do is block by holding the left trigger, L2. Now that's the trick. Pay attention now. You need to be holding that button all of the time. Now that you're holding down that button, right when you see your opponent swing, press the attack button R2. If you are having trouble determining when to swing, try attacking right when you see them in the middle of their animation. I say that because it will give you a split-second reaction time to actually press the button. If you do have decent reaction time and you're still having trouble, then pay attention to the opponent's body movement. Let's say they strike you and they hit your block, you will see a slight slower movement from when they just hit you. Now that little window where they can't swing again, that's when you attack. Also, just a little heads up, if you hear a clacking sound and no one is taking damage, that means you're parrying each other and the battle is going nowhere, so try a different strategy. I will say that is very rare to see because everyone has different swing speeds, but it does happen occasionally. As for some basic tips to know with parrying, is that you should never swing spam, because that leaves you very vulnerable to attacks and ragdoll effects, and it makes you very predictable to fight. And those are the last two things you want to be in a duel. You never know, you just might be up against someone that knows how to parry. Speaking of not knowing who you're up against, be sure to learn your opponent's playstyle. Just size them up and then attack. For example, when I play against someone, I try and look for a pattern. Sometimes when I see an Anakin player use an ability, they don't block afterwards and they just try to run. So the next time they try and use an ability and miss, I'll use one of my abilities and I'll strike him a couple times, because I know his playstyle is just to run away. Just don't get too cocky in those situations, because it is very easy to get carried away, and some people may even have multiple strategies with the same character, which I recommend you learning as well after you master one strategy. Also, be sure to take advantage of your opponent and get that punishing strike in if they don't get their timing right, or if they activate an ability at the wrong time. And what I mean by that is that there are some abilities in the game that require an animation and they leave themselves very vulnerable, so be sure to take advantage of those animation windows, whether you strike them with your saber or use an ability on them. But just remember that goes for you too, so before you activate an ability, think about the animation and pick the right time to activate it, because the wrong timing of activating an ability can be how you lose the duel. Not only can you punish them for a wrong timed ability, but you can also punish them for jumping, because when you jump you can't block, so they are left extremely vulnerable to any attack. Now before we go on to striking forms, I want to let you guys know that all heroes and villains have different swing speeds and stamina bars, which will affect how easy or hard it is to parry, and not all lightsabers do the same amount of damage. All of the heroes and villains do a different amount of damage. For example, if Luke strikes Vader and Vader strikes Luke, it won't be the same amount of damage that they do to each other. Also, if you try to strike in the back of your opponent, you will do bonus damage compared to striking in the front. Now, moving away from some of the parrying and attacking strategies, a lot of people don't know that there are multiple striking animations that you can do in the game. In fact, there are 8. And I'm going to show you every one with one hero to show you that there are uses for each one. Now with that said, I'm only showing you one hero's striking animations, so just keep that in mind because each hero and villain have their own, and this is just an example to show you the different strikes. So here they are. You have your basic attack, you have your running attack, you have your short jump attack, you have your normal jump attack, you have your forward lunge attack, you have your backwards lunge attack, you have a right lunge attack, and you have a left lunge attack. Now that you have seen all 8 strikes, you obviously can see that each one has their own uses and has their own unique animation. There are even some lunge strikes that combo together, so just play around with them to figure out which combos best suit you. Just to name a couple that work for me is to do a forward lunge attack, then do a backwards lunge attack, or do a left lunge attack and then do a right lunge attack when I'm fighting 2 different people at the same time. Now, striking is great and all, but there is much more to dueling than just parrying and striking people with different attacks. There are dodges, and using your dodges effectively can give you the win or cause you to lose, so with that, be sure to use your dodges very effectively and don't waste them. One good way to use your dodges besides triggering an attack is being able to avoid force abilities, because if you dodge in the middle of an ability, you are not affected by it. You can also use dodges to the side to avoid other abilities like saber throws, which can really come in handy when you don't want to turn around and block while leaving your back vulnerable. Dodges are also useful when someone has you in a combo. For example, if someone is swing spamming you or has you in some type of combo, don't run, because running will just make it worse, because in this game there's like an invisible staggering magnet from the lightsaber to your hero, so dodging is the best way to get out of it. If you find yourself still getting killed after dodging away, that could be because they are following up with a running attack, or it could be because of the bad hit detection. So more often than not, it is a lot more effective to dodge towards the player, and when you do that, it will usually open up an opportunity to strike them in the back and get your payback. If you can't seem to get behind your opponent, then try increasing your sensitivity slowly over time until you can play at 100 sensitivity, because it is a definite game changer when it comes to dashing behind someone and turning around for a well-timed strike. As for your abilities, they are great because you can really string all of them together, and most of them are great combo starters for basic attacks. It is also really important to know when you can use certain abilities like in the air, because that may really help you out if you happen to be jumping and you're in a vulnerable position, or you can even use those jumping abilities as a strategy to catch your opponent off guard. For example, you can catch people off guard by using Kylo's pull in the air, or even Darth Maul's force choke right before he hits the ground, because not everyone knows that you can use certain abilities in the air. And knowing which ones you can use in the air and which ones you can't just comes with experience and playing the game. Another thing to be aware of when using your abilities is that most of them require some type of animation to activate, so just be aware when you activate them. If you happen to be not good at comboing your abilities at first, then a great way to start using them for practice is to use them when you're out of stamina and you can't attack or block, because a lot of opponents get really aggressive when they realize you have no stamina and all they want to do is swing spam to get that kill, which will leave them very vulnerable to any one of your abilities, and it gives you a chance to replenish your stamina. So if you didn't already know, yes, you can see your opponent's stamina bar. It's right underneath their health bar. As for blocking, be sure to pick the right moments for when to press the block button and when to attack. For example, let's say you're out of stamina, do not hold the block button because you will not be able to recover that stamina back. The only way for you to recover it back is if you don't press the blocking button or the attack button, because it requires stamina to block an incoming attack or strike your opponent. Also, always try and keep your feet on the ground, that way you have the option to block, because when you jump or if you get knocked down on the ground, you do not have the option anymore to block, which then leaves you vulnerable to attacks and abilities. If you are also in a position where you can block or attack, then just be safe and block until you're sure you have a clear opening for an attack, because you will waste less stamina by blocking than you will by attacking or swing spamming. Blocking is a good tactic, but if you have two people that are just block spamming and the duel is going nowhere, then try to mix something up and do something. I would recommend trying to dash behind them and trying to strike them in the back. Now that we have all of the main tips out of the way, I highly recommend practicing all of these tips, because this is how you're going to get better. It may be really hard to pull some of these tips off at first, but just keep on practicing and you'll get there. Especially parrying, because each hero is different, meaning you can master Dooku at parrying and then you go to someone else like Yoda and completely suck, so don't give up. I believe in you, and show those noobs who's boss. If you're a beginner or have never parried and want to practice more of it and want an easy transition, try practicing with fast swinging heroes like Dooku, Luke, Anakin, and Rey, and when you start getting the hang of it, then you can move on to other heroes like Yoda, Obi-Wan, Grievous, and so on. If you are wondering where you can practice, offline instant action is a great place, because the AI heroes actually know how to parry, which is pretty cool, and you'll get some pretty good practice in. Also, the tips I mentioned aren't all the tips in the world, and there are a lot more, but I figured I would cover the main stuff, and if I did miss anything, let me know in the comments, that way other players can look down there and find even more tips. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video and you learned something, please consider subscribing, hitting that notifications bell, commenting, and smashing that like button down below. If you did not like the video, then feel free to dislike and give me your constructive criticism in the comments. Although, if this video did help you out and you'd like to see more guides like this from me, then let me know in the comments down below what hero or villain guide you would like me to do first, because I'm going to eventually do a hero guide for every hero and villain in the game, but I'll start with the most requested hero all the way down to the least requested hero. So let me know who you want to see first. Now, right before I end the video, because it's dragging on now, be sure to check out my Blaster Hero Guide video if you're curious about that. I'll leave it in the end screen for you guys, so check it out and subscribe if you like this content, because from my statistics from that video, 80% of you aren't even subscribed, so please smash that button down below. It's free, quick. I'll give you a quick second to do it. There it is. Hit it. Alright, cool. I'll see you guys later, and may the Force be with you always.